the CIA created the hippie movement. This work is a compilation of ideas put forth by the authors Dave McGowan and Tom O'Neill, as processed by Grok AI and read by me, comedian James Jordan. But it's not a joke, though. It's actually pretty serious. This theory posits the idea that the CIA orchestrated the hippie movement in the early 1960s to discredit anti-Vietnam sentiment, using Lookout Mountain Air Force Station, located in Laurel Canyon, Los Angeles, California, as the command center, and leveraging its location in the heart of the music scene. The Wrecking Crew band produced many of the movement's songs. Jay Sebring and other hairdressers served as undercover CIA assets, and the operation was terminated by using the Manson family to commit the Tate LaBianca murders, with Sebring's involvement and the cutting of utility cables at not only his home but the Cielo Drive location, amplifying the chaos. Additionally, I'd like to introduce the fact that Charles Manson and his followers made weekly visits to a free clinic in San Francisco, used as an office by CIA-affiliated psychologist Jolly West, suggesting further manipulation. Below is an estimate of the minimum number of people required to execute this operation, incorporating these elements while maintaining a lean, covert structure. As an aside for myself, I would like to add that everything that's mentioned here does have root in fact. You can actually look these things up. A lot of these people were, a lot of the band members were actually directly related to people involved in naval intelligence and the CIA. Just as a couple of examples, Frank Zappa's dad worked at Edgewood Arsenal as a chemist making weapons in Vietnam. And Jim Morrison, maybe one of the most famous people from this movement, his dad was actually the admiral in charge of the Bay of Tonkin that started the Vietnam War. Also, Charles Manson and his followers did, it is historically verifiable that they did go to the free clinic in San Francisco, and that Jolly West, who was in the CIA, you can look it all up, actually did have an office there, so they could have met. He was probably his Manson's controller. So this, you can read in as much fantasy and fiction as you want into this as you're personally comfortable with, but the truth is, most of those albums from the hippie movement were actually written and recorded by a single band called the Wrecking Crew. That is a historical fact. Who was paying the bills on that? There was not an FM station there at the time until somebody just magically set one up right as all these bands go to Laurel Canyon for no reason at all. There was no music scene there. What there was an actual CIA, or not CIA, but an actual top secret government installation that was known as Lookout Mountain that actually was operational until 1969. So you want to laugh at all of this stuff? I'll laugh with you. But the truth is, almost every single bit of it is historically verifiable. So what I did was I asked Grok to lay out how many people it would take to make this conspiracy come true, which is the big argument people always say whenever I suggest that music movements are not grassroots. All of them have been controlled, including rap and punk and grunge, which I'll do videos on those later. But the main argument, the number one argument I get from people is that it would involve too many people. There's no way that many people could keep a secret. And my argument has always been it wouldn't take that many people to do it. And far more people have kept far bigger secrets, like the first atom bomb in Alamogordo, New Mexico. There were estimated 20,000 to 100,000 people involved in that. Not one person ever slipped up and said a single thing. It was 100% contained, that conspiracy. Again, it's historically verified. You can look every single bit of it up. There really were tens of thousands of people involved in a government conspiracy to keep the first atomic bomb under wraps. And they were successful. They really did. And that was for the greatest weapon ever conceived of all time for our species, right? If anything was going to slip out, it would be that. If anybody was going to sell information, it would be that. For something as small as a music movement, just to destroy anti-Vietnam dissent, it would take about 50 to 90 people to do it. Think about that. That's less. That's about as many as it takes to run a fucking McDonald's. I mean, these are really low numbers. 50 to 90 people. I think it comes out to like 86 people is all that would be involved. So let's get to it. Number one, core leadership and planning at Lookout Mountain. It would involve a mastermind, a single mastermind. One high-ranking CIA official conceives the plan to create a controlled hippie movement to undermine the anti-Vietnam sentiment. This would have been necessary because at the time there were a lot of people that were against Vietnam, and the government was very definitely wanting to do it so that they could control the heroin trade in the Iron Triangle. But there were a lot of serious people, like college professors, that were anti-Vietnam, and that anti-Vietnam movement was catching momentum. So the government, in its own best interest, needed to create a controlled opposition. This is not something new. It's been done for centuries. It's standard military operation. It's cause and effect. So they create their own opposition that they can control. And the assertion here is that that's what the hippie movement was. Because from out of nowhere, all these musicians spontaneously moved to a single neighborhood in Los Angeles that has no business being the mecca for music. It was just a non-musical street in a valley in between some mountains in the Hollywood Hills. So one person comes up with the idea to create a controlled opposition. They have a Lookout Mountain Air Force Observatory Station, which was a strategic command center and at the end of Laurel Canyon. It was top secret. It had the military infrastructure and secrecy. This one guy, all he has to do is make an official draft of a memo outlining the strategy. We're going to use music, drugs, and cultural influences to shape the counterculture and then discredit it with a single violent act. All right, so that's one person. Inner circle approval. The operation requires approval from a small group of senior officers or intelligence officers to secure funding, resources, and coordination with the Air Force, which operates Lookout Mountain. This might involve the CIA's Directorate of Plans and possibly the FBI for domestic oversight. Assume 4 senior officials, such as a deputy director, a budget officer, psychological warfare expert, and 1 Air Force liaison. So now we're up to 5 people. Lookout Mountain Command Staff. As the command center, Lookout Mountain hosts a small team of CIA operatives to oversee the operation. With 250 existing personnel, mostly film technicians that were actually there, only a few needed to be witting CIA embeds managing the PSYOP. So assume 3 to 5 operatives to coordinate activities, liaise with field agents, and use the facility's secure communications. Also 5 people. Section 2, Music Production. The Wrecking Crew and Laurel Canyon musicians. The Wrecking Crew, an elite group of Los Angeles session musicians, such as Hal Blaine and Carol Kay, recorded backing tracks for 1960s hits attributed to Laurel Canyon bands, such as the Byrds and the Mamas and the Papas, Buffalo Springfield. They wrote and recorded a lot of these songs that were thought to be the beginning of the hippie movement. And that all came from one band. In fact, a lot of those original hippie bands didn't even know how to play their instruments. Again, look it up. If the CIA used the Wrecking Crew to craft the movement sound, a core group of 10 to 15 musicians could be involved, all unaware of the broad operation. One witting producer and studio manager ensures that songs align with the operation's themes, such as peace, drugs, and rebellion. So we have 10 musicians, 2 coordinators, that's 12 people. Laurel Canyon musicians and figureheads. Charismatic frontmen like Jim Morrison perform the songs and embody the hippie aesthetic. Assume 10 to 15 musicians are recruited. Some with intelligence or military ties, such as Morrison. Actually read Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon. There's dozens of these people. Pretty much anyone you pull out of the original hippie music scene has a direct family tie to naval intelligence or to the CIA, including, like I said, Frank Zappa and Jim Morrison. Either wittingly or unwittingly, all of these kids moved to Laurel Canyon near Lookout Mountain for coordination. That takes about 15 people. Handlers. Each musician or band needs a handler, a manager, or an agent to guide their activities, book gigs, and align with the operation's goals. One handler per 2 to 3 musicians requires 5 to 8 operatives. That's 8 people. Section 3, undercover agents. The CIA was known to use hairdressers as a good undercover plant for their CIA operatives because people talk. And back during that time period, it was a good way to gauge what was going on in the community. Jay Sebring was a very famous prominent hairdresser at the time who actually gave Jim Morrison his iconic look. By some amazing coincidence, Jay Sebring just happened to have his salon at the very mouth of Laurel Canyon, which was actually, I think, in the same building or across the street from Vito Polikas in his dance studio, where Vito and his wife created the actual look of the hippie movement with their freak dancers, which, again, what are the odds that these things would be on the same street? So as a CIA asset, Jay Sebring would have fit right in there as an undercover role. His salon provided access to musicians and influencers. It was ideal for intelligence gathering or shaping the scene's image. He also had utility cables cut at his home, his private home, days before the Manson murders. And they were cut in the same way that all of the utility cables were cut at Cielo Drive, suggesting that it's the same person targeting both groups. So it kind of looks like Jay Sebring might have been the target more than Sharon Tate. So assume Sebring and 1 to 2 other hairdressers as CIA assets in similar roles. We're now up to 3 people. So a handler for the hairdressers, a single CIA operative manages these undercover agents, briefs them on task. That's 1 person. Section 4, infrastructure, bars, radio station, and media. Bars and venue. The CIA funds or influences 2 to 3 venues like the Whiskey A Go-Go or the Troubadour near Laurel Canyon to showcase bands. Which at the time, there were not a lot of music venues, if any, when all of these musicians started moving there. It's literally the last place on earth they all should have been moving to. But within a few years, suddenly there's clubs popping up everywhere. So you need 1 to 2 witting managers to prioritize CIA-backed acts and cultivate the hippie scene. And then you need another 6 people, 2 venues, 3 per each staff, including the owners. Also, there was no radio station there at the time. Another horrible reason to start a musical movement in that area. But from out of nowhere, one pops up overnight. So you have a single FM station promoting the music, which requires a manager and a program director to select CIA-approved tracks, plus 1 to 2 unwitting DJs. That's 3 people. Media amplification. Just like in Operation Mockingbird, which is a real thing, the CIA plants stories in major outlets to associate hippies with drugs and hedonism. A team of 2 to 3 journalists across the nation or editors would suffice. So we're talking 3 people. Section 5, drug distribution. Key distributors. Figures like Ken Keasley and Owsley Stanley distribute LSD to the scene, potentially as witting or unwitting assets. Assume 2 to 3 distributors. Keezy, Owsley, the Big Blue Bus, the Grateful Dead, that's been tracked the way LSD moved around the country with them. Who's paying for these millions and millions of hits? Who's paying for it, if not the CIA? You think there's just some nice guy out there spending all of this money, producing millions of hits of acid that just happen to go and coincide with this musical movement that just spontaneously pops up from out of nowhere? What an amazing coincidence. And they supply drugs to all the events like acid tests. It would take 3 people to do that. 3 people. The drug supply chain. LSD production requires a chemist, such as MK Ultra's Sidney Gottlieb, and 1 to 2 operatives for distribution logistics. That's 3 people. So then you have event organizers. To integrate drugs into the scene, 2 to 3 promoters organize drug-fueled events, such as acid tests, festivals, freak-offs, things like that. You need 3 more people. So now we're up to the termination phase, where the operation has worked. People who are anti-Vietnam are now discredited because everybody thinks anti-Vietnam, oh, you must mean those dirty hippies who only care about getting high and having sex. It worked. It took less than 10 years for the hippie movement to completely annihilate the anti-Vietnam movement itself. And so Vietnam continued. It kept on going well into the 70s. The hippies didn't do shit to stop it. They all got sidetracked. So now that your operation is a success, you have to end it. So how do you end it? With the termination phase. Charles Manson and his family as assets. The Manson family integrated into the Laurel Canyon scene, which they were. They hung out with all of those people. They were directly related to the Beach Boys, Dennis Williams. They were directly related to Doris Day's son, who is a music producer. They actually stayed at the Zappa house, the log cabin. The Manson family were absolutely integrated into this bizarre music scene, even though the Manson family came from San Francisco. For some reason, they just spontaneously moved down to Laurel Canyon and then to Spahn Ranch. So they're used to stage the Tate LaBianca murders to discredit the hippie movement. Brings the whole thing to a screeching halt. Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, both oddly shady characters. It's also interesting that Tex Watson was an above-average student and athlete, exactly like the kind of people that are hired by the CIA. Just throwing that out there. He was kind of the Brock Sampson of the day, but somehow leaves Texas and ends up in this group. Okay, so assume Manson and 5 members commit the murders, targeting Sebring and others at Cielo Drive to maximize public outrage. The cut utility cables from Sebring's home and Cielo Drive suggest coordinated planning, right? That would take 6 people. Jolly West. Dr. Louis Jollion, known as Jolly West, a CIA-affiliated psychiatrist involved in MK-Ultra. Again, historical fact. He operated out of a free clinic in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district, and this is also the exact same free clinic that Manson and his girls used to make weekly visits to during the 1960s. Again, there's paper trails, recorded fact. A CIA MK-Ultra psychiatrist was in the same building that Manson used to take his girls to weekly. Jolly West's work included studying LSD effects and counterculture behavior. That was his job. And he just happened to be doing that job, studying counterculture behavior and LSD at the same building where Manson was hanging out. Amazing coincidence. And so it's assumed or theorized that his clinic could have served as a point of contact for manipulating Manson through drugs, psychological profiling, or direct influence. They could have met for all we know. Assume Jolly West and one assistant who is like a clinic staffer, right? That facilitating that whole thing, wittingly or unwittingly steering Manson towards violence. That would only take 2 people to do that. And we know for a fact that Jolly West was in the same fucking building. It really happened. So now you have a Manson handler, a single CIA operative possibly posing as a drug supplier or cult influencer who guides Manson's actions, coordinating with Jolly West's clinic to ensure alignment with the CIA endgame. So that's one more person. That would also help explain where all their money came from. I haven't really heard anybody talk about this, but there was actually a lot of film equipment found at Spahn Ranch, like brand new film equipment. Somebody was processing that 35 millimeter film, which was extremely expensive back in the day. Who's doing all that, if not the CIA? Somebody was paying for it. Wasn't those fucking hippies that were getting food out of dumpsters. So now you have a Manson handler, right? Who's a single CIA operative, possibly posing as a drug supplier or cult influencer. He guides Manson's actions according to West's clinic. They do the whole thing. That's one person. You got the cleanup team to ensure the murders achieve the desired effect. That's 1 to 2 media operatives that amplify the narrative of hippie violence, and 1 to 2 intelligence officers with CIA links. That's 4 more people. It's also an established fact that somebody went back to the Cielo Drive house after the murders and moved the bodies around. So there was some kind of cleanup crew involved with staging it. That's a fact. Also, there were CIA agents involved in the whole thing. If you read Tom O'Neill's book, Chaos, he actually names them and shows pictures of these actual agents that were involved with the family. So that's 4 more people. So now you have Section 7, operational security and oversight, field operatives, a team of 3 to 5 CIA case officers, likely based at Lookout Mountain, oversee this whole hippie movement operation, coordinating musicians, hairdressers, drugs, the termination phase. All of that would take 5 people. Surveillance and intelligence to monitor the hippie movement and prevent it from becoming revolutionary. 3 to 5 FBI, CIA agents conduct surveillance, possibly using Lookout Mountain facilities. 5 people to do that. We know for a fact that the CIA and the FBI both had major operations going on in the area at the time. Fact. So Section 8, total personnel estimate. Adding up the minimum personnel for this entire thing, we have leadership is 5 people, Lookout Mountain command staff, 5 people, the wrecking crew, 12 musicians, 2 coordinators, Laurel Canyon musicians, 15, handlers, 8 people, CIA undercover assets, you have Sebring, possibly 2 others, that's 3. The handler for them, that's 1. Venues, 6 people. Radio station, 3 people. Media, 3 people. Drug distributors would take only 3. Drug supply chain would take only 3. Event organizers, 3. Manson family for the termination section. It took Manson and 5 members to do all of it. Again, historical fact. Jolly West and 1 assistant, that's 2 people. The Manson handler, that's 1. The cleanup team, that's 4. Field operatives, 5. Surveillance, 5. This entire operation could have been pulled off with as few as 88 people. So am I saying that this is what happened? Yeah, absolutely. 100% I'm saying that this is actually what happened. As a musician myself who's moved around, yeah, you hear about towns where they have a happening music scene and people do locate to them. There was no happening music scene in LA at the time. The closest the music scenes in the country at that time were like in Tennessee and New York, right? Haight-Ashbury kind of had some movements, some anti-war movements going on. The hippie scene, as we know it today, all those bands came from one fucking neighborhood in the Hollywood Hills, where there also happened to be hundreds of links to intelligence operations and intelligence operatives and naval intelligence people in their actual family. And then there was no music scene at all. They all just, all over the world, some of them from Canada, some of them from Germany, they all just happened to move to one neighborhood. And yeah, if you want to argue that it didn't happen or it's not possible, sure, maybe it's all bullshit and I'm 100% wrong. The reason I'm making this video is just to counter the argument that it's impossible, that it's too big. You have one professional band writing and recording songs, and then those songs are being handed out to the bands that you've incorporated. All of these bands that are in this movement are all the children of naval intelligence operatives. Yeah, it really actually wouldn't take more than that. One guy at the CIA puts out a memo. Everyone sends their kids to Laurel Canyon. They all pretend to be musicians. One band, historically known, creates all of the albums in the movement. They tour around for a couple of years, and then drugs and sex destroy the whole thing. Because of course it does. Drugs and sex and hedonism aren't going to build up anything. It's going to cause a breakdown in anything. So the overall accomplishment is that you take all of the strong, rebellious youth of a generation who might stand up against the government, and you destroy them with sex and drugs. And I think that's exactly what happened. And I think it worked so well that they did it again with rap. And we know for a fact that crack was introduced into the black communities by the CIA. I think it was also done with grunge and the resurgence of heroin. And I think it also had I think it's also what's going on with the punk movement, which can be basically traced back to a single person. So, yeah, I personally think that the CIA masterminded one big operation to destroy anti-war sentiment and to break down. I think they were deliberately causing societal degradation by attacking the strongest group, which is the up-and-coming The youth, the teenagers, and the 20-somethings, those are the people that are going to be your enemy from within. If you're a government that wants control, you got to watch out for that particular group, because they're the ones who are passionate and rebellious. They'll throw it all away to line up against you. So you got to fuck them up. So how do you do it? You give them sex and drugs. And then you give them idols who also do sex and drugs. And before you know it, in 5 years, there is no anti-Vietnam movement. Everybody's walking around naked and stupid at Woodstock, and the whole world is laughing at them. So it worked. And I think it worked so well that they did it with other movements, and I'll make some videos about those. But the argument that it would be too intensive, too labor intensive, or it would take too many people to make it happen is absolute bullshit. Literally, it would take 50 to 100 people to make this entire thing happen. It's that easy. Thanks for listening.